Hey guys, welcome back. It's me, your host, Detrimental Dawalko, back at it again with another segment of Weledoy. I have two incredible guests joining me today via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Rahel Haile, and I am one of the co-leads for HPN Health Professionals for Network for Tigray, mental health co-leads, and I am a mental health advocate with a background in psychology and industrial psychology, and just here to bring awareness to mental health, especially for our people of Tigray. So thank you, TMH, for having us. Super excited. And Gide, I guess I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thank you, Rahel. My name is Gide Maza. I'm out of Fresno, California. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm in my own private practice, so I do and think and feel everything therapy. I'm a part of the HPN Mental Health Wellness team as well. So appreciate y'all having us.
I am so grateful to have you both on here. I think this conversation is definitely long overdue. We all know the taboo mental health is within our culture. Honestly, I think it's within the African continent culture in general. Mental health has just never been something focused on. So thank you for joining me. Before I dive into everything mental health with the both of you, though, I do want to just hear your experience within the past year and a half throughout this conflict and ongoing genocide. I want to know where both of you guys were when this war first erupted and your initial reaction to it.
Gide, take it away, and I'll go after you.
I was going to pass it on to you. A couple of different questions in there. So where was I? I'll start there. I was home. And oddly enough, I didn't get the news of the war, give or take, until almost 2 weeks after everything, ignited. And I think part of that was intentional, which I appreciate my mom, because I think I've said this before on a couple of other segments, but I'm a transplant of the original like 80s, late 70s, 80s war. So I was at home, didn't hear for about almost 2 weeks. Definitely still have family there that within, the Shirei region all the way down to McCullough. So, our family is like living it for real out there. And I think the other question was, and help me out, the other question
What was
was
your
like, how do I
initial
feel?
reaction?
Yeah, so my initial reaction, if I'm being honest, was like numb, frozen, because like everything that's happening now, although it's different, it's not different. At least the emotions that come with it. You know what I mean? Like me and my mom lived through it. My siblings also lived through it early on. So I think a level of like I was frozen. And even still to this day, a little bit of like frozen stuck, I would say. Which for me, I think is a good thing. Like it's a protective thing, I like to say, because I can't imagine immersing myself all day, every day, especially because we still have family in the region that, are living real life there. So I would say that. And I'd also say it just depends on the day, if I'm being honest with everybody. I think scattered is probably the best way I could put it. Everything from a level of anxiety, a level of worry that comes with that anxiety. And I know we'll talk about this, a level of like survivor's guilt, and everything that comes with that. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. And you, right?
Okay.
I remember I was in the mountains actually. We were celebrating a friend's birthday, and it was the same time during the election. And we were ready for Donald Trump to be out of office and excited for Joe Biden to take office. And that was our primary focus. But I also remember, so every so often we go back home, we go to Tigray for the summer. And I really wanted to, one of my biggest things was wanting to celebrate Ashenda back home. And my mom was just like, I don't think it's a good idea for us to go this year. Like the elections are happening. So the last time I was back home was 2017. So I was really, bummed. But when the war broke out, I didn't, like they said, I didn't understand the depth of it until like a couple weeks later. You know, we were so focused on the election and like just getting Trump out of office and things like that.
Right.
But as far as how I'm feeling 16, 17 months later, numb. I definitely have felt every single emotion from survivor's guilt to anxiety to depression. I've definitely understood my parents a lot more. I think it's brought me and my parents closer, just really understanding their past trauma and, you know, growing up, why they did the things that they did or why they reacted the way that they react to certain things. So, the silver lining, I guess, has been just making connections and meeting Tagaru from all over the world, you know, whether it be Gide or Udilishna, like that's been the silver lining, but it's definitely been, I never thought we'd be here still 16, 17 months later. So I can't even explain. It's this feeling of numbness and you wake up every day and you're like, is this going to be our life? Like, is this our truth as Tagaru? You know, it makes no sense to me, but you get up every day and you're reminded why we do what we do and why we have the conversations that are uncomfortable. And, you know, ultimately, I think as a culture, this war has really shined a light on the importance of our mental health, which unfortunately it took this long for us to understand. But I mean, better late than never. So
I couldn't agree more. I think the silver lining is definitely the union that has come about from the past year and a half. It's beautiful to see. It's the resilience that comes from that is also beautiful to see. What started your advocacy journey? And Rahil, I'll start with you. What was that initial, like, I've had enough, or like the numbness went away and you wanted to use that to fuel your humanitarianism? When was that initial start?
I would say I've always been a like mental health advocate. I think when I was in undergrad, the first year I didn't kind of know what I wanted to get my degree in or what I wanted to go to school for. And surprisingly enough, my dad was like, "Oh, what about the field of psychology?" And I was like, sounds interesting. I'm not a math person, so yeah, let's go into the field of psychology. And ever since I was, you know, actually dove into psychology and mental health, I've really been like a huge advocate on that. But as far as when it comes to the advocacy work and mental health awareness within our community, I would say it kicked in when the war started. And it was like, I think even like Gide had asked me, he was like, and how do you rank in your family? And I'm like, I'm the oldest. So I've always had this pressure to set a good example and just always be resilient and, you know, be strong for the family. And, you know, and I think that kind of just maybe in a way prepared me for this experience, I guess. And so I think my love for Tigray, and not just my family, but just Tigray and Tagaru all over, is really the fight that keeps me going. And advocacy work, at the beginning, initially, I struggled. I'm like, what is my role in this? What does advocacy for me look like in the community? I'm not somebody that's going to go out and like, you know, hold the microphone and scream at a protest, or, you know, I'm not really a big tweeter, but I know my heart and my soul are with mental health. And so what does that look like for the Tigray community? And it started small. I started advocating. I live here in Denver. So I would get with the community. We would do like mental health check-ins for the kids and just check in with each other like that, and do like vision boards and, you know, what is our vision once Tigray is free? And then that just kind of expanded to online and, you know, doing mental health Mondays. And now it's like, we have the youth on board. How do we get the parents and the advocacy on board, and really just bridging that gap and just seeing how affected the elders were and the kids were, and just making sure that I provided a space. Even if I couldn't get to our people in Tigray, if I could just get to one person here in the diaspora, that's one person, that's enough, you know? So I would say that's probably how my advocacy work started and what really drives me.
One person that could potentially have not had the outlet for therapy or any type of outside help. And for you, Gide, when did your advocacy within your community start on the mental health journey?
That's such a long story, but I'll say this: it didn't start with me. It really started with my mom. and my dad literally leaving the country, getting to Sudan, and then coming to the States. And the reason why I say it started with them was because, let me back up and say this. My mom is the cook in the community, you know, and I think we all know that between the cooking and the bona, literally, that's our therapy. You know what I'm saying? So my house growing up, it was a house of 9, but there was always a room. And, you know, I tell the story a lot. There was always a room for, like, people, which is interesting, like Tagaru and all across the spectrum. You know what I mean? If you needed a spot to stay and you were just coming from overseas, like, you knew the home that you were going to be welcomed to in, and try to figure out what's going on that side world, was that house. So that mental health started with me then. And, you know, I grew up kind of like a hard head. Like, I'm like, yo, I love people, but I want my own room. My family should have my own, but it paid out in the long run. So it's always been in me, but it was lived out, like, through my parents. It was lived out here just in our home. So that's why I would say it started.
That's amazing. As we move on to why we're here, mental health awareness, I want you guys to define it in your own words for me first. So what does mental health mean for the both of you? Rahil, I'll start with you.
So for me, I think mental health, and I'll say specifically, I'm always going to tie it back to being Tigray. There's just a certain level that I think we all hold ourselves to, and we always have had this idea of strength. And what does that look like? And for me, mental health is understanding who you are and your difficulties and things that you're struggling with, addressing them, and then creating the proper coping skills, or, you know, putting yourself around certain people, or educating yourself to address those things, rather than hiding from your truth, whether that be depression or anxiety. You know, we're told resilience, you know, there's intergenerational trauma, and there's also intergenerational resilience that comes with who we are as Tagaru. So I think
that
really
should be a quote somewhere.
I think it really is understanding who you are, and, you know, and saying, hey, I'm not okay. And to me, that's mental health, and that's mental strength in and of itself.
Agreed. And for you?
I don't know if I can come back from that definition by her. I'm piggybacking off what I heard and co-signing that. And then the other thing for me that's interesting is, and I was looking back at my notes, but I think about the fact that, like, all we have is one mind and one body. And everything that means in between, and how we take care of our mind, body, soul, is mental wellness, mental health. So I would define that mental wellness and health is that. But I would also say, and I know it's tricky, you know, because I think most people don't like pain, right? Like, we would rather feel good all the time. But I would say mental health or wellness for me is also, like, experiencing what we experience, good, bad, and everything in between, and coming out of that with a level of, like, resiliency.
I think the most important part of what you said is that it's our mind, body, and soul are one. So if your mental is good, your body's good. If your body's good, your soul essentially is good too. So leading to my next question, why is mental health important? Why is the awareness of mental health important, and why, but more specifically, why it's important to be aware of your mental stability or instability in everyone's case?
Yeah, I think it's important because we need to understand that things that we go through in life, like what we're experiencing now as Tagaru, it's not okay, right? And it's okay to not be okay. You can be angry, you can be sad, you can be upset, and it's not the emotions that we feel, it's how do we react to these emotions? What are our responses to these emotions, right? The things that we're going through. Everybody's going to experience life. You know, there's sometimes the cards that you're dealt are just, it's unfair. I mean, we all know that. Look at what our people are experiencing back home. But it's important to not let your trauma define you, but it's also important that you understand that your trauma has, you know, shaped you to be the person that you are, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
What is your, I've experienced this as a person, and I can easily use that as an excuse to lash out and be an angry or a bitter person, or I can use that to give me strength. I can acknowledge that, hey, yes, I went through this and I experienced this, but it made me a better person. And I think that's the why mental health is so important. And I think the biggest thing too is, like Gide said, is understanding that it's an entire approach. It's not just your physical, in the Tigray community especially, we're always talking about dieting and exercise and going for a walk and da. But we're only thinking that it's helping us in a physical sense. When we talk about coping skills, we include exercise, we include walking and things like that. But there's also a mental well-being that comes with it. You know, that's part of the coping skills. And so as a community, we definitely need to do better, whether that means us educating or people on the receiving end understanding that it ties in, it's all the same. So whatever for your physical health, your mental health is just as important. All those go hand in hand. And it's also okay to say, hey, I'm struggling today. Today was not a good day. I was feeling very anxious when I woke up, or, you know, I woke up and couldn't do anything physically. Like I was at work, but mentally my brain was not. We need to stop hiding from our feelings and hiding from our struggles. And understand that we as individuals, we as Tagaru, and we are as a community are important, and our mental health is just as important.
That continues our resilience. I agree. Gide, why do you think mental health is so important?
Our world and our worlds require a lot from us every day. And especially in moments of like crisis, you know what I'm saying, which is what's happening now to us as people. So I always bring it back to, I can't be available the way I would like to be available to my people if I can't center myself and check myself and be available. And that could be as quick as just saying, how am I doing, right? How am I thinking, how am I feeling? And then getting up and doing what I need to do and coming back. So the world requires a lot of us. And I mean, the last, 17, 18 months, how many of us have slowed down? So again, for me, it's, the world requires a lot, and it's pulling us every single day, and especially now, which is also interesting. And I want to add on to what I was saying, you know, this whole like mind-body connection. We have to understand that, like, historically, as a people, we are the most hospitable people on this planet. And there's no argument there. But what's interesting is we forget that, like, we got to give back to ourselves. And how does not giving back to ourselves come out? For us as Tugaru, like, the physical is huge. The sleep, the stomach pains, the physical tiredness, all the signs of like depression and anxiety, like literally live in us. And they live in us like emotionally, but they come out physically. So I would add that piece too.
So within the light of the current events, endless footage that we've seen throughout the year, horrific atrocities being committed, with all of those videos and footages that our community has been forced to see and endure, how hard has it been implementing what we just discussed, the importance of mental health and the importance of making sure to take a step back and reassess where you are mentally, physically, emotionally? How hard has it been to install this in the Tagaru within your own community? Because as we mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, it is a taboo. Mental health advocacy, just the conversation in itself is a taboo. So how difficult has it been to help people understand that?
It's been tough, I would say, because for me, specifically, you know, you want to encourage people to find a balance between staying informed about what's going on back home, but also understanding that these this footage that's coming out, you know, these reports that are coming out, they're very real. We've known as Tagaru how real they are, right? And this is even before we know the reality on the ground. But we want to know what's going on, and we see these images, and even now, you know, just you bringing that up, there's this overwhelming feeling of anxiousness for me because I can still see these images. You know, I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I get on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, let me do my tweets for the day, and it's just like, what news is coming out? And especially for my parents, when I tell you these last 17 months, I have not seen them so glued to their phone. It's crazy. It really, really is. And I get it. You know, they want to stay informed and they want to stay up to date and know what's going on. There's barely any information that comes out of Tigray, but when the information does come out, it's so heavy and it's so frustrating, right? It's like, you want to be there for your people, but if there's a blockade, you literally cannot, right? It's not that we don't have the resources, those of us outside of Tigray in the diaspora. The resources are there, we just cannot get to our people. So that's another frustrating thing, right? And then back to what Gide said, there's this feeling of survivor's guilt. Like, you know, how my people
define that for me, for the audience that might not know what survivor's guilt means.
Yeah, so when it comes to survivor's guilt, and Gide, feel free to chime in, is just the feelingness of either surviving an event that you were a part of or being outside of an event that is happening. So for those of us either that are, you know, in Tigray, and maybe those that have been lucky to escape that are no longer there, or those of us that are in the diaspora that, yeah, we haven't experienced it, you know, being there, but we still have this tendency to feel guilty, you know, if we don't tweet for the day, or we don't listen to the news, or we don't read these reports. It's like, we have to be informed because I have to know what my people are going through. I can't talk to them because of the communications blackout. You know, big example now with Easter coming up, right? Easter is a celebration. It's who we are as Tagaru. How can I sit here and celebrate and cook a lavish meal and, you know, cut bedgear or whatever it may be when my people are back home starving and my people are suffering? So there's this sense of overwhelming guilt that although I may physically not be there, you almost feel like if they can't do it, why can I do it? So then you start beating yourself up about it, you know? But like I said, it's just really hard. And that's why I say we have to, as Tagaru, we have to give ourselves grace and we have to give each other grace. That to the point where it's like, hey, if I need to take a step back today, then I trust that Gide, being, you know, my fellow, you know, Tigrawai or, you know, community member, that he's going to be able to step in for me. Because on days where he needs to take a step back and from his advocacy work, then I can jump in. And in order to be great for Tigray, you know, tomorrow, I have to take care of Rahel today, because this is going to be over soon, right? Or this is going to be over. And we don't know the reality of the ground. So I think it's so important that we take care of our mental health now, as outside or even inside of Tigray, because the amount of emotions that is going to be unloaded on us once it's open is going to be a lot to take in and a lot to digest. And so we have to do the mental preparation now and that starts with taking care of yourself.
I think that's really important to allude to, is that this is a marathon. The fight, yes, is currently still going on, but once those borders are open and we're able to actually see the just evilness that's taken place on ground, the fight in itself there is going to be another marathon in itself. So handing that baton over is really important, and making sure to know when to do that is also really important. What do you think? What would you say the difficulty in advocating for mental health in your community has been for you, Gide?
You know, I don't believe in difficulty. Like, I'm just being real. I believe in there are things that get in the way of our lives. So I wouldn't say necessarily difficulties. I would say like the things that have gotten in the way. And this is me speaking to people and our people specifically, is understanding. So, for example, survivor's guilt, we're supposed to feel that. No matter where we are on this planet as to God, we're supposed to. That there's a level of like healthy survivor's guilt that pushes us to stand up and support as we can, not as we wish or shoulda, woulda, coulda, but as we can, our folks. So I would say, like, once I start bursting that bubble, that like, hey, listen, like, it's okay for you to hurt. You're supposed to. Like, you're living, breathing, walking. And you know, us as Tagaru, we are like so connected by our heart, not our minds, so connected to our people, right? Whether it's funerals or weddings, we're connected. So there's a level of like feeling like we're just supposed to. So like when I start doing the education piece, and I know we're going to start talking, you know, we'll talk about this down the road here on the show, but when I start like listening and paying attention to not the difficulties, but the whole that happen when we're just trying to survive, or we're just trying to connect with our uncles and aunties and cousins, like all of it makes sense, you know? There's a level of like normalcy that's happening here. We're on a program talking about our hearts because that's what we're supposed to be doing. Like, because we don't have access to our folks. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, that's where I'm at. It's just a perspective piece for me.
So the current climate in Tigray has caused so many triggers, especially like Gide said, if this is the second time around where you're experiencing such atrocities. And you mentioned very briefly earlier when I was talking about the footages and all of the just horrendous scenes that we've been seeing through social media, recorded and posted by the perpetrators themselves, you felt overwhelmed. The trigger that comes from, need I say, PTSD, could you guys tell our audience what those feelings are? Like, what is the trigger? Where is it coming from? And the best coping mechanism for it?
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to triggers, I think one of the biggest things is understanding as individuals what our triggers are. What are the things that if we know, we read about it, we watch it, or we see it, or we talk about it, that it's going to take us, it's going to upset us, it's going to make us sad, it's going to take us to this place that we don't want to be in. That in and of itself is a strength mentally to know, to say, hey, I know that there's this amnesty report coming out, and as informed as I may want to be, I know that reading it is really going to frustrate me. So I'm just going to not read it, you know, and that's okay. Some people might, it takes us back to survivor's guilt. Some people might feel guilty for not reading this report because they're like, I need to know what's going on. You know, it's my duty to read what has come out and listen to these interviews and watch these videos. But it's so important as human beings, as Tagaru, to know the things that upset you and what your reactions are to things. Social media especially, I know usually around the time when really big articles come out, I tend to try to stay off of social media because there are videos and images that I know will take me mentally to a place that I don't want to be in. So I acknowledge that and I accept that, hey, I haven't been on the internet for 2 weeks because I know what's circulating, and I don't want to feel angry and upset. Um, and so that's what I have to do for myself. And even when it comes to talking about certain things, I know those of us in the diaspora, we're always talking about the war to allies, right? Let's outside of Tagaro, we know what's going on, but we want to continuously like advocate, and we want to let the world know. We want to let all our allies know what's going on. But sometimes for me, it's a trigger. And when I hear like people in my workplace, or whether, just outside, or I'm on the internet and I see, fundraisers for Ukraine all over the world, that for me is a trigger, and it is very upsetting. And it mentally takes me to a place that makes me very angry. And I know there are things that I just can't avoid because, I'm going to have to get on the internet. I'm going to have to get on Google. I'm going to have to get on whatever. But I take that and I'm like, okay, if they can go to a grocery store and when I pay, they ask me if I want to donate to this cause, how can I make that cause Tigray? Right? How can I implement that for my people? And just really just almost, changing your mindset and changing your mentality when you know what your triggers are, and understanding them, I think has really helped me in this process.
G'day, for you, what define trigger, as well as the best way to cope with triggers as well?
I'll start with, I guess, what people call coping mechanisms, and I think that was spot on. For me, everything happens in balance. When I go to the extreme or I don't do enough, that's when problems happen for me. So, one, I'm okay with people as long as they have a good support system, being aware of their triggers and being in constant maintenance of their triggers. So if I need to pull my phone out and check Twitter, how long is okay for me to be on Twitter? Right? So I'm allowed to define that, and I would encourage the audience, define that for yourself. Because again, avoiding to an extreme is only going to cause us and lead us right back to the thing that hurts, right? So I would say that, and Rahel said this, and I'm co-signing this as well because it's absolutely spot on. Be aware. We cannot expect to try to be better or get well if we're not willing to be aware or struggling to be aware of those things that hurt us, right? So awareness is key to that. And then on top of that, what does your support system look like for those triggers? The who, what, where, when, why. I will die on the cross of we as Tagaru, we're very, very heart people. We think and feel and do from our heart. So get back to our heart and then get back to our community, right? I can't access my uncle, but in the States, I can access my mom, right? I can't access my cousin, but in the States, I can access my sister. So, instead of pointing to that trigger that says I can't, point to the other side of the trigger that, is well, what can you do and who do you have here? Because we know that we don't have access to the other side, right? I hope that answers that question.
Definitely does. But while you're at it, could you highlight intergenerational trauma for me as well, and the triggers and the PTSD that can come from that, as you've mentioned, coming from refugees in Sudan before you migrated here to America?
The only example that I can give is, to this day, I still remember the smell of just of people who who were struggling just to survive. I remember that, like, to this day, like even at 2 years old. That's the example that I would give. That's a PTSD example, right? Smell, sight, physical sensations, you know what I'm saying? Like our body feeling off. I don't, and this is very interesting because I'm okay being personal about it. You know, I don't have very like specific vivid memories, and the only memories that I have are like positive memories, and that was my like PTSD brain saying that you're too young and there's too much going on, so I'm just gonna make sure that you survive, right? Mm-hmm. I have a different definition of intergenerational trauma just because of my perspective. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's like the feelings and the experiences that live in our bodies and in our minds that get passed on. And by the way, we know from research, and I know we have a lot of doctors like on our team, we know that the research is showing us that whatever we don't take care of physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially gets passed down to the DNA, right? Mm-hmm. So depression, it's a DNA genetic thing. It's a brain chemical thing that gets passed on and on and on. So think about generational trauma just in that way. It's this thing that happens to us from our head all the way down to our toes, and it gets passed on until we decide that, hey, listen, like I'm aware and I'm gonna work on breaking that thing or bringing it to light.
And what does cutting that cord look like?
That's a big question. I don't believe in cutting the cord because we're human, right? And if kind of what I hear from people that I see day in, day out, when we cut that cord, we're cutting an experience that actually can benefit us all the way around. So for me, it's not cutting that cord, it's being aware of that cord and being aware that you're allowed to know and notice where the cord is, how it's moving, what it's signaling to you, that it's needing from you, and then creating that circle, right, to take care of that for you.
I love that. So we just touched upon our triggers and how to cope with them, and you'll see it pop up on your screen, guys. Just a list of tools and ways to make sure that you're, actively and continuously are aware of your mentality and how to make sure you sustain a healthy mental. As we move on to our next topic per se, we've been living in this fight for a while, what feels like never ending and forever, honestly. For folks that have been day in and day out fighting and advocating first and foremost, but even just for people that are idle on the side and overwhelmed, what is your best advice to kind of find normalcy in their day-to-day living amongst this crisis?
I can honestly say that we are never going to go back to who we were prior to this war. And that's okay. That's something that we need to accept. But what does that look like for us, right? I think none of us signed up to be advocates. None of us signed up to be protesting day in and day out and to be on Twitter and these social media gurus and just, things like that. We didn't, but we knew that we had to do what we had to do in order to be there for our people in whatever capacity that looks like. And I think it's very important to say, people will say we're being a voice for the voiceless. Our people are not voiceless. They have voices. They have just been silenced, right? And what are we doing now? What actions are we taking in order to prepare ourselves for the day that Tigray is free? Mental health has not been, like you said, it's a taboo. It's a stigma in our community. right? It's we don't really talk about it. We resort to, you know, religion and Sabbath and church and things like that. And I'm not saying that's bad. That's who we are. That's who we are as Tagaru, right? We're very spiritual and religious people.
Right.
But when I'm having an anxiety attack or when I'm experiencing PTSD, what have I learned? What coping skills and coping mechanisms have I read up on or taught myself that I know are going to help me through this situation, you know, or through this panic attack that I'm experiencing or this anxiety that I'm experiencing? And I think advocacy comes in so many ways. And it's just important. The one thing that I found very helpful is really just finding what my passion is and expanding on that, right? I think I, myself and Gita included, we've been fortunate enough to be in this world of mental health that's not really big in our community. I mean, we can go back in Tigray, we can probably even count on one hand how many therapists or psychiatrists or psychologists there are in Tigray, you know? It's not much, which goes to show mental health wasn't something that was really put in the forefront and was advocated for. So if that's what we were put on this earth to do for our people, then that's what we're going to do by any means necessary, whether that's having conversations, whether that's putting up posts or just sharing the resources that we've had. Because the way that I look at it is America's good. America doesn't need me and my resources. They'll be fine without me, right? What am I going to do? What is Rahel's role in the future of Tigray? And what does that advocacy look like for me now? And so, like I said before, if I can just, if this segment just reaches one person and tells, it is just a reminder or, you know, just lets them know, hey, I need to take care of my mental health and what does that look like for me, then that's a blessing in and of itself. And I will forever be grateful for that. But I think we also have to understand that what we're going through is tough. There are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days. We're not always going to be on this high level of advocacy and I'm ready to go tweet and I'm ready to go to a protest. It's going to be a lot. But that's why I go back to saying we have to give ourselves grace and understanding, and we have to be there for each other. That's the biggest thing. Like, understand that if your friend or your cousin or your mom says, hey, I'm not okay today, that's okay. Like, let them take that moment, even for yourself, take that moment to take a step back so that you can be great tomorrow, I think is the biggest takeaway. And like I said, give yourself grace, being gentle, staying informed, knowing your triggers, understanding your parents, understanding the abeti and why they react the way that they do and what this means for them. They've suppressed so much for so many years that it's now being brought up to the forefront again. They weren't able to have conversations like this, right? Some of them were forced to come to a different country with kids, learn a new language, find a job, make a home for themselves. They didn't think that their kids were going to be going through this again. But now, what does that mean for us? What is our role in this advocacy work? And let's ensure that, you know, we have these conversations now so that we know what type of conversations to have with our children in the future.
Amazing. Thank you. And good day for you.
I think everything that Rahel said, she just summed it up. However, I would say this. We're people where part of our wellness is education, right? It doesn't matter what part of the country we're in or what part of the globe we're in. Education becomes this thing that is 100% part of our wellness. So I would say, you know, the stigmas and the taboos, we have to be okay talking about that stuff. I think Rahel said it a while ago, right? Like it's okay to be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is a signal. Right? And I always tell like folks that I talk to, pay attention to what your mind and body is signaling you. So, you know, conversations around what is happening and happening to us. What are the signs to look for on a basic level, right? Like, what does it look like on a foundational level to be depressed, to be anxious, to struggle with sleep? right? Like defining that. And then the next layer to that is redefining what that looks like for us as a people. So conversation is important. Again, because part of our wellness is, you know, we're folks of education. That helps us understand the world that we're around. So I would say that. I would also say, like, you know, nothing new under the sun. We do need to, like, turn back around to our, like, cultural coping mechanisms, you know? Our food, which is one of the things that's been taken away from us, right now. Our music, which has been taken away from us right now. You know what I mean? Our church or churches, that's been taken away from us now. Like, that's very intentional. We need to understand that, and we need to get back to those basics as well, you know, because again, those are part of our, like, familiar wellness strategies. And I think the other thing too is, and it goes with understanding, and I have talked about this, you know what I mean? Like, there's multiple layers of generations that are struggling right now. It's just not me. It's just not my mom. It's 3, 4, 5 generations, and being able to circle and sit with each other and listen before we decide what the solution is automatically. You know, one of the things that I love about us as people is that because of what we go through and we have gone through is we are like crisis management.
Right.
We're triage at its best. We do that. You know what I'm saying? And we're also very, very, like, well versed at being solution focused. I don't worry about that. You know what I'm saying? What I tell our folks is, hey, I know and I trust you. That when things get really, really hard, you're going to be there. I know that. And I know what you're going to do is going to be beneficial. But let's stop there, because that's the end goal. And let's come back and just listen. Let's just circle up. You know what I'm saying? Like, go sit with your mom while she's having bona and just listen, whether she's on the phone, you know what I mean, or she's just wanting to talk. Like, listen first before you decide what the solution is. And again, you know, this isn't anything new that I'm speaking, because it's what we do already. You know what I mean? Like, these, 17 plus months, one of the fastest mobilizations of a core of, like, young people that came together, you know, with HPN was wild to me. Like, we get it. You know what I mean? So let's just step back and listen. Let's understand that the crisis is real, and that we will take care of that. But let's step back and just, like, group up together again. Let's eat. Let's check in on each other. Let's pull up on each other when we need to. Let's also give each other space when we need that space. That's what I would throw at us.
Thank you. As we've said multiple times throughout this conversation, culturally, we're taught to be strong, resilient, and just always keep that image on the outside, even though inside we're just, you know, in turmoil and depressed, for lack of a better word. But if there's anything that I, for myself, have learned throughout this conversation, hopefully the audience has too, is that it's not a weakness to get some rest. It doesn't mean you failed to take a step back, and the survivor's guilt that you might feel when you do so is also okay. I knew this was going to be such a fruitful conversation from the beginning, but I couldn't thank you guys enough. I've learned so much. Hopefully the audience has learned as well. There's this book that I recently read. It's called Atlas of the Hearts, excuse me. In this book, she stresses the importance of labeling your emotions with the right words, right? Because you could be feeling a certain way, but the moment you say or utter a word that might not coincide with how you're feeling, then you either worsen your state of mind or state of being, or you don't give it enough attention. Therefore, you won't be able to assess it or help yourself in the right way, right? So which leads me to our final segment for today, which is the mental health definition and terminologies within our community that we might, cover up with religion, like Rahel said earlier, or just don't even know how to translate it. So for the first word, that's depression. How would you define depression?
You want to go down? I'm gonna
I'll let you take it away.
I don't subscribe necessarily to the book, or in my world, like what's called the DSM medical book. So that definition is out there, but in general, it's a feeling of sadness that interrupts how we think, how we feel, that interrupts our sleep, that interrupts our diet, so our eating, and give or take, usually anywhere between 2 weeks to a month. So that initially is the definition that I live with. And
the best way to be self-aware that one might be depressed?
Yeah, it starts with, you said this on kind of an interesting scale, which I liked, is one, recognize and reach out and educate yourself on what the word depression means. Right? So education is, for me, it's the first step. Like learning the foundational piece. And then the other part of that is reach out. Reach out. If you're sad, reach out. I know that like us as people, we initially stay away from the medical world for many a reason. So reach out to somebody that's close to you that you trust, that you can say, hey, I'm not feeling okay. I'm sad. Right?
Second is anxiety, that I think is huge amongst the community right now. All of our anxiety is at an all-time high. I can speak for myself when I say I live in anxiousness. Just fear of what I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and see, whether that's on social media or a phone call that I might get from somebody. So anxiety, or Intergenerational farhat, how can you be aware, see that within yourself, and how can you minimize the feeling of anxiousness in the definition of a mental health advocate, Rahel?
So I actually, there are days where I will wake up feeling very anxious, and I'm just like, it's this uneasiness, this worry, this nervousness. And I'm like, why am I feeling so anxious today? Like, I just woke up, my day just started. It's this almost uncertainty of what the day can hold or what's going to happen. Like, I just don't know. And I think the things that help me in those moments where I'm feeling very overwhelmed and very anxious are, hey, this is just a moment. Like, this is going to pass. I'm just feeling very anxious right now. It's temporary. It's a temporary feeling. And just reassuring myself that, that this is temporary and that this is going to pass. And I think for me, I do have a high functioning anxiety. So I will literally fill my schedule up as if nothing is going on, right? You're still, you're not like a typical, maybe, when you're feeling anxious, maybe you're like not down and out, or you're not in the mood to do things. Whereas with high functioning anxiety, it's like, okay, let me make sure that my schedule is booked from Monday through Sunday, and I don't even have a break. So that way I'm like distracting myself, and I'm always keeping myself busy with something so that I don't have to sit there in my thoughts. Because sometimes being in your thoughts can be very scary, and you're forced to deal with emotions and feelings that you don't want to deal with. And that is something that I have openly talked about, and that I still to this day am working on, just kind of what that looks like for me and just trying to create that balance. It's not healthy.
I was just going to ask, how detrimental do you think that is for the health of our mental, to have high functioning anxiety?
It's not good because there's only for so long can you keep yourself busy. There's going to be a point in time where you will sit there and have nothing to do for the day or for an hour, and all the feelings that you tried to avoid for that day or for that hour are going to all hit you at once. And now you're in a worse position than you were if you would have handled those emotions as they came up in the day or in the week or in the month or whatever. I think for even this war, for a lot of people, when the war hit, it was like, boom, advocacy mode. What does that look like? Go, 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 keep myself busy, planning protests, doing segments, or whatever the case is. Then when you finally have a moment to yourself, you have this overwhelming feeling of emotions. And you're just like, what is going on? Because we have not allowed ourselves to really sit there in our thoughts and in our feelings and understand and label those emotions. Instead, we've suppressed them. We've booked our schedules super full to avoid it. So it's very detrimental and it's not healthy. Gide, I don't know if you want to go ahead and add to that.
Yeah, no, you know, as we're talking, I'm thinking about this too, like the mood disorders, you know, that's what we call them under the umbrella. So the depression, the anxiety, some of PTSD, which, by the way, that's like the most common things that happen to us as two daughter people. Like that's what we experience quite a bit. I would say this, like we feel them emotionally, but they come out and they're expressed physically. So stomach aches, right? Sweaty hands, your heartbeat maybe really fast, not fast enough. Your breathing will be either shallow, you know what I mean? So very like quick, like something is gonna happen and you're worried about that, or it's very, very fast. So no, I would just add that like these things happen to us physically, and that's what we need to watch. Blood pressure, you know, like one of the most classic things I think that happens to us as people, especially our men. Those are the things that we need to look for. So high and low blood pressure, dizziness. I know like quite a few of our people will talk about just not feeling like they're in their body, and then it comes out as just literally feeling dizzy. Blurry vision, chemically, like in the brain, like really, really fast thinking, or not feeling like you're thinking, almost feeling stuck. So I just wanted to add the physical pieces here that I hope, you know, that people could understand, but then also can access easily if they need help.
Good day. Who you're a licensed marriage and family therapist, and within your field, what is one advice that you could give to our community as to why therapy is essential? Therapy is not only needed when you feel like you need help, but just therapy is essential throughout life, but most importantly now.
I just go back to, you know, what I've said earlier, and just what I continue to remind us is we can't be available to what's happening now or to this world that requires a lot from us, and that every day is asking a lot from us, if we can't stop and really slow ourselves down. We have to understand that like we're the center, regardless of where we're at in life, of what's happening around us. So it's no longer enough to just go and do without being able to say like, where am I at? Because I can't be effective for everything that I have to do, need to do, want to do, unless I'm present. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm available to myself. Yep.
Thank you for that. And Rahel, you are on the board you're one of the board members for HPN. You're also co-leader of HPN4Tigray's mental health and wellness committee as well. Firstly, thank you for all you're doing, because it's a rare sector within our community. There's not too many doing what you're doing, so very much appreciative for that. But what's next for you guys? What's on your radar? How do you plan on implementing mental health within our community?
Yeah, so first of all, HPN has been doing a lot of things behind the scenes. They recently built, alongside ECDC in Tenedba, a wellness center. And we created a psychoeducation support curriculum for adults and for children ages 6 to 18. And we finally have been able, after almost a year of working on this curriculum, been able to implement it in Sudan. So we currently have one group of adults and one group of children ages 6 to 12 who are using this psychosocial support curriculum at the Tenedba camp, which we are so grateful for. For the kids, specifically, it is a 9-week session, a 9-week program where, they work on coping skills and just really understanding their feelings and their emotions. So we're really excited about that. And moving forward, our biggest thing is awareness. We want to bring an understanding to our community, to our people, that, it's okay to talk about your mental health. As a people, we love to talk, but we never seem to want to talk about our mental health. So I definitely would say, I think we have gotten a lot better. I don't know if it's really been by choice, but I think this war has definitely forced us to have conversations about our mental health and our mental well-being. And so the next step is really just continuing to bring awareness and understanding that your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And in order to be great for Tigray tomorrow, the three of us here and the audience out there, you have to take care of yourself today in whatever capacity that looks like. And it's okay to say, hey, I need help, right? It's okay to reach out. That's what we're here for. We don't want you to look at it as a weakness. It's a strength to say, hey, I need help. And so that's some of the stuff that, HPN has done. And I think that's some of the next step in terms of mental health is awareness. I mean, the title of this segment is mental health awareness. So exactly. We're going to continue to push for that.
As we wrap up this incredible conversation, I want to give you both the platform. If you have a message for the people and the youth of Tigray that will be able to see this, any message for them, whether that's in English or Tigrinya, that's up to you. But yeah, I'll give you guys the floor to just say any words that you might want to, send back home, and then we can wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I'll try not to get emotional, but the biggest thing is Adjohum, Adjona. We are here with you guys. I know they may not be able to see or, hear us, but we are fighting this war right alongside you guys in whatever capacity that looks like. We promise, as a vow for those of us in the diaspora and outside of Tigray, to continue to be a voice for your silenced voices. We know you guys have voices, and we know what you guys are capable of. But in return, we need you guys to promise us that you are going to take care of your mental health, that you are going to try your best to understand your triggers and try your hardest to put your mental health and your well-being at the forefront. So yeah, Adjohum, we're here with you guys.
Good.
Rahel, I can't I gotta go before you, man. My words of encouragement would be breathe. As long as it seems and feels, it is temporary what's happening to us. And to us means the people that are across the seas as well, right? Because we're experiencing this different thing that's happening while our friends and families are experiencing a very, very real, visceral thing, you know? So I would say, we got you. Hold what you can hold, breathe. Yeah, I would just end it with that. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I think the highlight of your ending message, Rahel, is that I like the silenced voice as opposed to be the voice for the voiceless. I think that's what I want to wrap this on. That's the tone that I want to leave this on, that they do have a voice. They've just been silenced and haven't had an outlet for their voices for the past year and a half and some change. So yes, for those of you back home that have been silenced in your voice, as you can see, we have amazing, amazing advocates such as Rahel and Gide, amongst many thousands of others that are globally doing their own fight within themselves as well. So again, thank you guys for this fruitful conversation. I've learned a lot. I hope my audience has learned a lot. And if they have any questions, where can they find the both of you? Any social media platforms, websites that you want to direct them to if they have any questions or advice that they seek from either one of you?
Yeah, so I think, HPN4Tigray.org is definitely the biggest one. You can find us on there. We're working on a resource tab to find all your mental health needs. We're working on putting together a list of Tagalog therapists all over the diaspora. And, you guys can reach out to Gide. He's the professional, I would say, in this case. Gide, how can they reach you?
No, I don't even think I'm a professional.
Licensed
I
is
respect
the right word.
Right, there we go. Oh, by the way, I just happen to be lucky to be licensed. You know what I mean? Like, this has always been built in me. And I think when we talk about wellness, it's built in all of us. It's what does our support look like? You know what I mean? To access that. So how to reach me, Instagram is the quickest way. G Maaza LMFT. I've gotten quite a few conversations going via the DM box, so I know that this is like a real thing for our folks. So reach me there, and I'll do my best to reach out within quote unquote 24 hours.
Wow, that's a pretty quick response time. I'll give you that. Again, thank you guys so much. And for the audience, I'll have more for you next week, so stay tuned and wait for that. Bye-bye.